excited that you're here and that we're going to be able to talk about mom guilt today. Who wants to talk about guilt? I mean, guilt, that's an exciting thing, right? Who doesn't want to talk for half an hour about guilt? Me. Just kidding. I'm excited. Let's talk about it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about guilt, when we look at it in our reality cycle, where does guilt come in? Well, guilt is a feeling. Our feeling is guilt. Now, if we're having a feeling, there's only one reason that we're having a feeling, and it's because we're having thoughts that are kicking in that chemical reaction to give us that feeling. So thoughts that might bring us guilt, especially mom guilt, is one of our favorites. I'm not enough. Now, when it comes to mom guilt, a lot of times it comes to I'm not enough like another mom, right? I think guilt is really interesting. As I was pondering guilt this week and I was thinking about it, I think that it's a very comparative emotion. Like we don't necessarily have guilt on our own. Does that make sense? Like when we talk about guilt, it's almost, you've been judged guilty, right? Innocent or guilty. It's like someone else has to make that distinction. I think that if we make a mistake, we can feel remorse. We can feel, actually, we kind of have a feeling of disease or dis-ease, right? Because we're doing something that is not in alignment, right? It's something that we don't believe is correct. And so we end up feeling guilty, or we end up feeling in a state of less than ease, right? We feel bad. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for, bad. Or we can kind of feel guilty, right? I'm kind of interchanging those words. But I feel like with mom guilt, there's this kind of like phantom perfect mom that we're trying to be, right? There's something else. And the point is that whatever you do, it's not enough. Because couldn't everything just be a little bit better? And really, especially if you're like a full-time mom, or no, never mind. If you're a mom and you take that job seriously, it's a pretty darn important job, right? You're bringing people into the world. You're giving them all their formative time. Of course, you could be doing better at any time. That meal could have been a little bit healthier. That vacation could have been a little more educational. Educational vacations? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just have this disease. It's like recovering homeschooling mom, right? So, right, so that we have guilt about any number of things. How active we are in our kids' lives. Like how much time do I spend talking to them? How much have I taught them? Do they have enough life skills, right? Have I, education, that's a big point. And am I giving them everything that they need? Don't get me started on this. We probably should have talked about this before Christmas because I previously getting on Pinterest, getting on social media, seeing what other moms are doing and how other moms are like creating this magical Disney-esque experience like on the 24/7 for their kids. And you're just like, wow, that is so amazing. I would have loved that when I was a kid. And maybe that's another part of the guilt too, is kind of this belief that we're going to be able to give our kids everything that we wanted but didn't have when we were kids. And like somehow, in some way, I think maybe that was probably my goal, maybe it was your goal too, was to be able to give them everything that I felt like I should have had. And of course, that's impossible. And it's also interesting because I'm not raising myself, right? My kids' likes and dislikes are different. In fact, I can't see into the future. I don't actually know what my kids need. And need what? Like, do we know what they're preparing for? They don't know what they're preparing for. We don't know what they're preparing for. I guess the point that I'm saying here is that we kind of think that there's some kind of perfection. This idea that perfection exists and we're not doing it is what brings that guilt. So I'm just suggesting to you, one of the first things about getting out of mom guilt is realizing that there really is not a perfect way to do it. There really isn't. It's not like just, oh, well, I'm not perfect and nobody's perfect, but there is perfection out there and maybe if I try hard enough, I'll get closer and closer. No, we just need to take that off the table because it's not helpful because of this right here, right? I'm not enough, guilt. What kind of actions do we take when we're feeling guilty? Well, we know that when someone's guilty of a crime, they run, right? They escape. They try to get away. And 9 times out of 10, we're not feeling guilty because we're engaging too much, right? It's because of a lack of engagement, right? So ultimately, when I start to feel guilty, the action is the opposite of what I actually want. And isn't that interesting? When we start having these negative emotions, these negative thoughts that lead to the negative feelings, and then we have negative actions and negative results, which perpetuate the circumstances that undoubtedly, right, triggered these thoughts in the first place. That's why it's the reality cycle, right? Because it keeps just going around and around, and they work together. They feed off of each other. And so that's why it's important that when we're having a negative feeling, we have to examine what the thought is. And one of the first things we need to ask when we have a thought that is bringing us a negative feeling is, one, is it true? I'm not enough. Is that true? For one thing, that's a super vague thought. Enough for what? Right? Again, and it's this kind of idea, is it true that there is some perfect way to do this job? That there's some kind of perfect thing. And the thing that's interesting about believing, if I believe that there is such a thing as a perfect mother, there's one perfect way to do that. The problem with this, because it's like, and how would I know that I was a perfect mother? I would know that I was a perfect mother because I would have perfect children and I would have a perfect family. But the problem with that is it's saying the circumstance that I'm trying to provide for my children is perfection. Or, okay, fine, perfect enough, right? 98%, whatever. Okay, and the thing is, if I have a perfect circumstance for my children, then they will become perfect. Whoa. That my result is perfection. Right? That's the belief. That's the belief. If I were a better mom, if I was a better mom, I'd have better results. And it's just that simple. What are we totally skipping? Perfection to perfection. Oh yeah, the thoughts, feelings, and actions of other people. If you think that there is anything in your kids' lives besides that's driving their results, besides their thoughts, feelings, and actions, you are mistaken. You are mistaken. Okay? Now, can we influence them? Oh, absolutely. Is that our job to be able to influence them? Is it our job to be able to find truth and then help our kids with that? Yes, absolutely. Does it help them when we believe if I were a better mom, you'd be a better kid? Now, number one, that is not true. It's not, see, look at me. I'm even having a hard time like going, well, maybe it's a little bit true. Like I'm still holding on to that. Because of course, there's influence, but it's not a direct line. It's not perfect mom, perfect kids, right? Everything in between there is what really matters. And if you want to have your kids more successful, then we would teach them about their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions. And that is what is actually driving their reality. And that is what is driving their results. And really, folks, that is what has driven us to our current circumstances, is the way that we think, we feel, and we act. Right here, this is what is going on. Okay? We all know. We've all met families. These perfect families, we just think, oh my gosh, they're the best. That mom, she's amazing. And then what do their kids do? Do their kids just like accept them 100%? Some of them might, right? It happens sometimes. But you know that there are times when the children reject everything that the parents gave them. And somewhere in the back of your mind, if you're like me, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, but really they must have messed up somewhere. You know, and it's just not true. It's just not true. And truth, you know, what are we even saying there? But the thing is, can we know? Can we know if we did something a little bit differently, that it would have guaranteed a different outcome? Especially when it's concerning someone else. No, we don't. So important when we start thinking about this is like, is there any legitimate truth in mom guilt? One, is there some kind of like mom judge, right? Is there someone who can certify you to be the perfect mother? or even someone who can certify you to be enough, to tell you, okay, yeah, that's good enough. Go ahead. Now you can feel good about yourself because I, the mom judge, have decided that you are a good enough mom. Well, you're a C plus mom. If you want to do better, you can apply again, and I'll be happy to take your money, blah, blah, blah. You can see how this would go, like if it was an actual thing. Now, the thing that's interesting about this, I want to talk about this because it's really important. Because let's say that there was such a thing as a mommy certification or a mommy judgment, so that you could decide if you were an innocent or a guilty mom, right? What's kind of interesting about that is in order for that to have any kind of efficacy in your life, in order for you to get a certification that says you are a worthy mom, okay, you're a great mom. Like if there was some kind of certification that was able to do that, the only way that would have any kind of any kind of efficacy in your life is if you believed it, right? Because gosh, guys, if we're having mommy guilt, haven't we all gotten something around Mother's Day that says world's best mom? It's not effective. It's not effective. And it's not true. So what is true? What is true? So if mom guilt is not the way to navigate my life, then what is important? How am I supposed to improve? And that's kind of the sick thing sometimes, is that we feel like these negative feelings are actually helping us improve. And I can see how you kind of might feel that way. I have a whole nother theory about this. It's going to have to be another video or a book. I'm excited about it. Okay. No, I won't. There's no time. I'll sum up. I'm not going to sum up. I'm not even going to talk about it. What am I talking about? Oh yes, this belief that somehow beating myself up is going to get me to better results. Because if I really tune in to how bad I am, I'm going to change. Now the problem with that is then you start to believe that the only way that I can get better is to feel bad. Okay, and that doesn't even make sense here. That doesn't even make sense, because those seemingly positive actions, and they might seem positive. They might seem like, no, I changed. I felt really bad about it, and so I changed. And then, Then that brought some good things into my life. But ultimately, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable because I want to feel good. So in order to feel good, I'm going to feel bad. Like, like that doesn't even make any sense. I think it's enough that when our feeling starts to change, that we start to feel like I've done something wrong, like I need to adjust. That's a very different feeling than I'm not good enough and I'm not worth it and I'm worthless. It needs to be, I can do better and I will do better. Because when I think I can do better, how do I feel? I feel optimistic. I feel positive. I feel empowered. And that's a lot more true than I have to change. Do you have to change? We all know there's a lot of people who are doing worse than you are. There's people who are doing better, sure. But there's people who are doing worse. Do you have to change? The answer is no. You don't have to. It's not true. But the thought, I can do better, is that true? Yes, right? And you don't feel compelled. Instead of a feeling of, I have to, I'm not good enough, it's I can, and I can do better, and I can improve. Right? Both those, I can see how, you see how you could feel like either one of those things are true, that you can believe either one of those statements. But I hope you can see that the one I can do better is going to have you feeling the better feelings, and it's going to be sustainable and it's going to go longer. And I think we've talked about this before, but really, if I want to feel better, I have to kind of increase my capacity for feeling good. Right? If I want to feel good all the time, I have to start practicing feeling good all the time. It's a little bit exhausting. Okay? You have to work up to it. And so take those opportunities anytime that you can change that thought around, any thought that's making you negative and go into a negative feeling, if you can just shift it a little bit, difference from I have to change, this isn't good enough, to I can change. Just that little difference, it's going to get you into the habit of feeling good. And then feeling good becomes your normal, right? That's what we need. We need to increase our capacity for whatever it is that we're trying to improve. And the only way we do that is by practicing, All right. So what have we talked about? We've talked about how there's no such thing as a perfect mom. We've talked about how trying to please others is a little bit of a farce, because ultimately we don't feel good unless we approve of ourselves. We really do. And what can be difficult is if we outsource that, if we put it on someone else to tell us that we feel good, even though ultimately the only way I feel good is by telling myself that I am good, right? We can stop understanding or even stop knowing who we really are. We might not even know what's important to us. We may not even have questioned whether or not what we're working towards is really of any value to me individually, because I've outsourced it, right? Instead of thinking what's important, what is right, what is true, I've said, I will wait to see what someone else says about that, and then I will just accept what they have to say. And ultimately, you're going to have a crisis about that. Because really why we're here on this planet, I believe, is to be the expression, the complete and unique expression that is only you. That is totally individual, has never happened before, and will never happen again. Right? The whole purpose is to find out what that is and then to express it in the best way possible. And how do we know what the best way possible is? Only you know, right? Only you can decide. Now, you might get a little bit of fear about that because I'm still thinking, oh, there's like some kind of nebulous thing out there that's the perfect me. And what if I make the wrong choice? What if I go the wrong way? My question is, how are you going to know unless you try? Unless you actually take the time to sit down and think about it and make a decision. And then try it out. How else are you going to know? How else are you going to know unless you have data? How else are you going to have data unless you do? That's what we have to do. We have to realize when we get paralysis, being kind of overwhelmed, then we have to be able to move forward to get the data, get the information. And there's no judge here. There's nobody besides yourself who's going to say, you should have known better. You're judging yourself. Right? It's kind of interesting. Like you see this on the cop shows or whatever, and they're just like, oh, well, you know that judge. You know how that judge is. Oh, that judge hates this. Well, right now, you really are your only judge. When it comes to your feelings and how you feel, you're the one who's making all those decisions. So are you going to be a good judge? You're going to be a bad judge. Are you going to be the kind of judge that you want to take your case in front of? Or are you going to be the kind of judge that like, it doesn't really matter what you do. This judge hates you. Haven't we been in that place before? Where it seems like we can get so full of self-loathing that no matter what we do, we're not happy. We're toxic to ourselves. All right. Now I've totally forgotten what we were talking about. Oh, yes, we were talking about outsourcing judgment and the mom guilt and how we need to be able to come back and actually find out who we are. What is important to me? What do I believe so that then I can try it out and I can find out and I can move forward? Okay. If I'm constantly second guessing myself, I don't know, what should I do? You'll never know until you do. So we've got to do so that we can get some data and then we can move forward. And the only reason you're going to feel bad about making that decision is because you've decided to feel bad about it. And the question is, how do I feel when I feel bad about myself? Like any thought that I have, I think it's so important. This comes from the work of Byron Katie. So Byron Katie, she's got a great story, but I'm not going to tell it. You can look it up. Her book that I read was called Loving What Is. It was transformative, really amazing. And what she does is she has kind of a process. It's a 4-step process where you really look at all of your thoughts. And the first question is it true? If I've identified a thought, is it true? And then the second question is, can you know that it's absolutely true? So for instance, like, I should have planned a better birthday for my daughter. Okay. I should have hired a clown. Who knows? So here's that thing. I should have done that. Or I should, we'll just go with the clown. This is so weird. Okay. I should have hired a clown for my daughter's birthday. I should have done that. Okay. Is that true? Yes, I should have, obviously. Second question. Can you absolutely know that it's true? Can I absolutely know that I should have hired that clown? Well, I don't know. Could something have worse have happened had I hired a clown? I guess it could have. And depending on how you feel about clowns, the answer is obviously yes, it could have gone a lot worse. Like do I have enough information that I can make that kind of a judgment call to really say this should be happening or this should not be happening? And the answer is no. We really don't know. Can I know for certainty that I should have hired a clown? No, I don't know that. Okay, then the third question is, what kind of action do I take when I think that thought? What are the results of that thought when I think I should have hired a clown? Well, what do? I beat myself up. I think, I regret it. I should have done better. Why am I the worst? And then what happens? We run, we escape. We don't want to think about that. We run and we hide. Right, and the fourth question is, who would you be without that thought? If I couldn't think that thought that I should have hired a clown, how would I have felt about that birthday party? Well, now I can start to think, hey, it was a pretty good birthday party. You know what? There was some cake there. The kids liked the cake. I mean, this is kind of a stupid example, but I hope that you can kind of start to see the importance of really trying to find out this thing that I'm thinking that's bringing me so much misery, that's bringing me so many actions that are not congruent with the life that I want to live. Is it even true? And if it's not true, why am I choosing to believe it? Or if I can't prove that it's true or I can't prove that it's false, and it's a choice for me to think that, is it in my best interest to continue to think that thought? So anyway, Loving What Is, Byron Katie, amazing. Also, you can go to her website and she's got free downloads there. Fabulous, fabulous. Okay, so the next question then is, how do I find out what is important to me? How do I find out? And this really goes into the self-care. It goes into self-care because we have to realize, right, that if we get into a negative spiral here, it's just going to bring more negativity. So it becomes very important for us to be able to know that how I feel is extremely important. And once I start to accept that as a legitimate priority, that how I feel is a legitimate priority, then I can start to take self-care seriously. Now, part of the problem is that we think about self-care as being selfish. And quite honestly, could it be that? Absolutely. Could you kind of fool yourself into thinking that you're doing something, for the greater good by getting your highlights? I don't even know what the self-care is. But I think when it comes down to the mom guilt, it starts to be anything that doesn't involve my family is selfish. Is that true? Can I absolutely know that that's true? And this is why we need the data. So if you're thinking that there's something that you need to do, and maybe it doesn't align with your mom guilt, like your mom guilt-o-meter goes off, I can't do that, you need to find out if that's really true. And if you have a theory that if I did this, I would really be able to be more whole, more centered, be able to show up more congruently for my family, well, then don't you really have the obligation to do that? Isn't that more in congruence with being able to show up as the kind of person that you want to be when you take the time to know who you are, when you take the time to know what's important to you, when you take the time to really express the one unique person that will only ever be you? Isn't that what we want to be modeling? Isn't that what we want to be experiencing? Now, I think it's very important that honesty is one of your values, because only when we're being honest with ourselves can we know if we're being selfish or if we're practicing self-care. But you have to know that for yourself. And if you're being honest with yourself and you've taken the time to know what's important to you, then you can say that. And it doesn't matter what other people might think or what other people might say, because you're not here to live their life. You are here to live your life.